stream. We are reading Brian Jake's Castaways of the Flying Dutchman. Chapter 31. Picture of that wooden plank they found inside that tallow with the chalice. Now to investigate the old stables, the old blacksmith place. Mrs. Wynn's lawyer, Mr. Mackey, was a man of small stature, exceedingly neat in nature, dressed in knife-creased pinstripe trousing and 8-button black vest, complete with silver watch and chain, a crisp white shirt with starched wing-tipped collar, and a dark blue stock with a modest peridot stock pin. He sported spring-clipped prince knees hanging around his neck and on a black silk ribbon. A snowy peak of white linen kerchief showed from the bottom of his black fustian tailcoat. Mr. Mackey had a center part in his dyed black hair and a small, precisely trimmed mustache. He shaved twice daily and had about him an aroma of mascar pomade. The consensus of the village opinion had marked him as a dry little stick of a man, his movements quick and bird-like, his speech clipped and precise, peppered with legal jargon. Now Mr. Mackey sat looking at the chalice on his desk. He had heard the story of its discovery from the old lady. Taking the princely spectacles from his nose, he let them dangle by their black ribbon. He stared around at the faces of Will and Elaine Drummond and Mrs. Wynn and the old ship carpenter, Amy and Alex Somers and Ben. I take it, madame, that you require information regarding the location of the old stable and smithy from Mr. Blaithwaite. Then so be it. You boys run and fetch Mr. Blaithwaite here. However, I think I might be of some help in that direction. I acted on behalf of the railway company in conveying the land for the station and retained a copy of the paperwork for my own files. Ben and Alex left the lawyer's office with the big black dog in their wake. Talking out of the corner of his mouth, Ben murmured to Alex, "See over in Evans Alley, there's some of the Grange gang. They're watching the Almshouse, probably to see if your mangled body gets flung out the door. They haven't spotted us yet. Why not give them a wave?" Alex strode off toward the alley. "I'll do better than that. Ben, I'll pop over and have a word with them." Ben shouted, "Hello there, you lot. Hang on a moment, I want to see you." They fled like startled deer. Ben shrugged. "That's odd. They don't like speaking to the ghost of a murdered boy?" The two friends laughed uproariously. They brought Mr. Blaithwaite back to Mr. Mackey's office. When the librarian stood scratching his wiry mane, dandruff sprinkling like little tiny snowflakes on the shoulders of his black scholar's gown. I can't stop very long. Library business, I'm afraid." His voice trailed off as he sighted the chalice on the desk. Ignoring everybody around him, he picked up the chalice with great reverence. No hesitation showed in his voice. "Calyx magnificence! Magnificence! Magnificence!" Byzantine 10th century, crafted by the skilled goldsmiths and lapidaries of bygone age. What a perfectly beautiful specimen. These pigeon egg ruby jewels, beyond price. The tarsi and the engraving, exotic, fabulous. Who came by such a remarkable chalice as this? Where was it discovered? Oh, tell me! The grizzled old seaman related the tale in full, omitting no detail. He brought Mr. Blaithwaite up to strength on even the latest development. The old scholar scratched his frizzy head. The initial gusto of seeing the chalice was wearing off, and he returned to his customary self. Very good, very good. So I take it, wish to know the exact location on the ancient stables and the blacksmith's forge, as it were. Mr. Mackey held up a sheaf of legal-looking documents. They're not far from the station, according to my record, sir. Mr. Blaithwaite raised his bushy eyebrows, staring at Mr. Mackey's small, dapper figure, as if seeing him for the first time. No, not so, sir. Research shows that, Smithy stood on, the precise spot where the station was built. Yes, indeed. Mr. Mackey was not one to bandy words. Drawing himself up to his sparse height, he spread the documents on the table, tapping a neatly manicured finger on the map diagram. Then look for yourself, sir. My records are undeniable. Mr. Blaithwaite pored over Mr. Mackey's map, showering it with dandruff as he scratched his head in bemusement. Well, my calculations were wrong. It seems. I defer to your technical knowledge, sir. I must consult you more often in my historical location studies. May be so bold as to suggest such a thing. Of course you may, sir, replied Mackey as he clipped his precise manner. He rolled the papers back into a scroll. Mrs. Wynne liked her lawyer, despite his somewhat pompous attitude, and could see his interest was aroused by the search. Would you care to take a look at the site, Mr. Mackey? We'd be glad for your expert opinion. A faint smile appeared on the lawyer's face. An intriguing invitation, Mom. I accept. The old lady turned to Mr. Blaithwaite. We'd value your help if you'd like to come too, sir. Scratching his head, he pointed to himself. The old scholar grinned like a schoolboy. Who, me? Oh, I say. Rather lead on, good lady, lead on. Please do. It was a curious team that trooped out of the solicitor's office, heading toward Chapel Vale Station. Obadiah Smithers and his wife, Clarissa, had emerged from their carriage in the village square. He intended on shopping, and he intended to go to Mr. Mackey's office. Seeing the lawyer piling into Mr. Wildrum's cart with the others, Smithers hastened across to him, waving the last compulsory purchase notice was holding on top of his top hat. Hold up there, Mackey. Where the deuce do you think you're going? I was just about to consult you. Mr. Mackey did not like Smithers. He considered the fellow an overbearing bully and stared officiously down from the gig at him. Consult me without a prior appointment, sir? I'm afraid it's out of the question. I've got other business. Smithers waved the order. But what about this? It's arrived in this morning's mail. I want it to be pinned up in the square. Mr. Mackey glared at Smithers over the top of his princings. Then fix it up yourself, sir. You look capable enough. There's a nail and post for the purpose. You can leave the present order up or tear it down to make room for the new one. As you can see, I have other matters to attend. I bid you good day. Drive on, please, Mr. Drummond. Smithers was left standing red-faced and at a loss for words as the gig pulled off smartly. Mrs. Wynne's and Elena's stifling laughter with their kerchiefs. Not so with the others occupants of the dairy cart. They coughed aloud. Well, that put him in his place, eh? Hey, do you think? Do you see the face on him? Like beetroot. Look, he's still standing there waving his silly paper. Mr. Mackey did not join in the merriment. Polishing his pince nez, he blinked sternly at his traveling companions. I would like to see the contents of the order. I fear it will be no laughing matter for Chapel Vale, or you, Miss Wynns. We must take a look at it on our return. They took the road past the station and over the level crossing. Ned passed a thought to his master as he allowed Amy to stroke him. Wherever we're looking for, bet I'm the one who finds it. By the way, what exactly are we looking for? The boy answered, I don't know, Ned. It's a large, overgrown area near the station. We'll probably have to cover with an old carved piece of stick as our only clue. We'll need the help of a good sniffer. Will halted Delilah at Mr. Mackey's command on what appeared to be a piece of common land about 20 yards away from the rail tracks. John and Will spread the old map from the farmhouse cottage alongside the railway property map that Mr. Mackey and Mr. Blaithwaite were studying. Elaine, who had left her baby at home with Will's ma, sat in the gig watching the two boys, while Amy and the black lab ranged out across the course-covered area. Mr. Mackey pointed to a corner in his boundary map. You see, here's the boundary line of the railway property. It ends 10 feet away, where Will halted the gig on a bit of disused path, so this is all common land. Mr. Blaithwaite looked up from one map to another. This has got to be the place, sir. Very good. See the tree? It's the same place on both maps. Yes. John pointed to the only tree left standing on the far side of the common. Do you mean that one? Mr. Mackey shook his head doubtfully. Your map is dated 1661. Surely the scruffy tree hasn't been there that long. Blaithwaite was glad to prove himself not only a historian, but as a botanist. I must take issue with you on that, sir. Let's take a look at this tree. They trooped over to where Ben and his friends were standing beneath the tree. It was twisted and venerable old specimen with a huge, untidy crown of thin leaves that sported red berries. The trunk, a gnarled column, was very thick, seeming to consist of several thinner trunks welded together by age. John instinctively knew what it was. This is a yew. There's two growing back at the Almshouse. Mr. Blaithwaite became very schoolmasters, wagging a finger at the young people and lectured them. Quite right. Taxus baccata, the common English yew. Specimens have been recorded to up to 1,000 years old. The branches of this tree may have provided wood for the English longbows to fight the French at the Battle of Agincourt. John, hand me that carved piece of wood from your class knife, please. Mr. Blaithwaite scraped away at the uncarved side of the wooden stick until clean wood showed. Then he shaved a small section of bark from the trunk to reveal the wood beneath. Both common English yew, you see? Will smacked his open palm against the tree. All sounds very good so far, but what are we looking for and where do we search? Amy placed both hands on her hips. Around the tree, I suppose. Ben sprang and grabbed a spreading limb. Or maybe up the tree. He climbed up the branches. The others started to search around the base of the yew. Alex got tired of the hunt below, and with Ben's help climbed into the boughs too. The dog looked up, communicating with his master. If you fall and break your leg, don't come running to me. After more than half an hour of scanning the trunk and around it, Mrs. Wynne gave up and went to sit in the gig with Elaine. Will straightened up, holding his back. Ain't so easy as it looked. See anything up there, Ben? Ben clambered down. Nothing, Will, as you said. It would help if we knew what we were looking for. Being shorter than Ben, Alex found descending a bit difficult, but as he made his way to the other side of the tree and found a low branch edging onto it, he hung there by both hands facing the trunk. The seaman stood beneath, reaching up with both hands. Come on, mate, let go, I'll catch you. But Alex hung on to the branch, his face toward the trunk, shouting, I found it! Here it is! Ben shot back up the tree like a monkey, making his way across to Alex. He leaned down, peering at what looked to be like tiny knots sticking from the bark. He gave a joyous whoop. It's the same pattern on the stick. Well done! Will shouted across to his wife. Elaine, drive the gig over here, beneath the tree. Chapter 32. Some sort of cross. Looks to be wrapped up with string. Standing upright in the little cart, the four men could easily make out the pattern of marks. John traces them with his finger, then touched the point to his clasp knife to one. Metal! There are old horseshoe nails driven into the trunk. The bark has grown over them, but the pattern remains. Mr. Mackey dusted dead grass from his trouser knees fussily. But with one difference, sir. There's an arrow shape pointing down. That must mean we have to dig down at the base of the yew tree, directly where the arrow indicates. The dairyman backed Delilah away from the spot, grabbing a spade. Will began cutting away the top grass. Right about here, the old ship carpenter spat at his hands and grabbed another spade from the gig. But Elaine had different ideas. I think it's a waste of time digging here. Will, surely the girth of the tree has grown bigger since the 1600 or whatever. If you're looking for something buried, wouldn't it be right under the trunk now? Don't waste your energy either, John Pestrin. Will threw his spade down despairingly. You're right, my love. Ben watched Ned go off with small, dainty pieces, sniffing hard at the ground. He sent a thought to the dog. What are you doing, mate? The black dog did not answer for a while, but kept sniffing on forward. Then he stopped and sat down a short distance off. Tell them the arrow is probably pointing not down, but out from the tree, somewhere around here. Ben stared at the Labrador. You could be right, but why there? And why not further out? Ned nosed the grass, turning a soggy, moss-covered length of board and sniffing, because this is where the old smithy once stood. The boy turned to his friend. Suppose the arrow is not pointing down, but out. Would that be about where Ned's sitting? Blaithwaite was studying the piece of lath and its carving. About the length of a horse, 8 horses, and 1 more horse length. What do you think, Mr. Mackey? The solicitor focused on the sticks with his glasses. You could have something there, sir. At least we've got a horse to test your theory with. Taking the gig to one side, Will unharnessed Delilah, lifting one of her black hoof paws. He measured it with a yew twig and then snapped it off, and then backed Delilah up until her tail was touching the yew. John, take the twig 'tis a shoe's width, mark off 8 lengths from where my mare's front hoof is now. The seaman did as Will bade. When he marked off the 8 lengths, he stuck the twig into the ground. Right here, Will. The dairyman brought the horse forward and stood Delilah with her tail hanging down exactly over the twig. The black Labrador looked up and licked Delilah's muzzle, which was directly above him, then looked over to where Ben stood, passing as a thought to his master. Told you I'd sniff it out, didn't I? Elena chuckled. That good dog of yours, Ben. He looks as if he's gotten more sense than a lot of us put together. John and Will started digging on the spot. Elaine harnessed Delilah back into the gig shafts. Come on, Winnie. We'll get... Oh, surprised me. We'll get back to the hillside farm and get lunch ready for the digging gang. Ben and Amy helped Mrs. Wynne up into the carriage. She waved to them as Delilah trotted away and called carefully, "Bring whatever you find straight up to the farm." The old mariner and dairyman dug a square hole straight down about 2 feet. Clank! Will's spade struck something as he was shoring the side of the earth straight. We were digging slightly astray, John. I think the dog was sitting on the wrong spot. Ned sniffed. Dearie me, showed you the place, didn't I? Ben heard the thought and agreed with his dog. We can't expect a poor canine to be accurate to the inch, can we? Pay no heed, Ned. I thought you did splendidly. They dug down again, directly over the place where Will's spade had struck an object. After several minutes of hard digging, a sandstone block was uncovered. Between them, the two men lifted it out. Alex cleaned it up and had with his hand until the letters EDW appeared visible. Ben ran his fingers over the letters. Same as on your map, Will, and the same as name is in the back of Winnie's family Bible. Edmund D. Wynne, the one who had 1 son and 7 daughters. Further speculation from Ben was cut short. The old seaman bent and began tugging with both hands at an object embedded beneath the stone where the stone had laid. Here's something, old mates, an old chest. Will helped him pull the chest out. It was iron-bound, rotting and fused hard to the soil around it. Once they got it out, a few smart jabs of John's spade soon caved it in and broke it open. Blaythewaite fell on his knees and lifted out the contents. Wrapped in sheepskin and heavily coated in solidified tallow, it was fairly obvious from the shape the thing was a cross. High noon sunlight steamed in the farmhouse kitchen. Will's ma shaded her eyes against it, peering across the yard. Here they come, Winnie. Put a kettle to boil again. Little William toddled out, holding Winnie's hand. Daddy! The dairyman swung his son up on his broad shoulders. I hope you ain't ate all our lunch, William. I'm starving. But food was out of the question once Elaine spotted the bundle. You found it. Good men. Amy took little William from her father. What about me? Will's ma wiped flour from both hands upon her apron. And you too, my dear. Good work. Now let's see what you've got. My meat and potato pie will be ready directly. Ben placed the bundle on the table. Do you think we'll need more hot water to melt the tallow, John? Taking out his ever-class knife, the ship's carpenter set to work. With any luck, it'll just peel off. Mr. Blaythewaite was permitted to undo it. Finding an edge on the skin, he drew it back, exposing gold. In less than a minute, he had stripped the sheepskin tallow away completely. It was a crucifix, completed with a tiny, monstrous chamber for displaying the host. The top ends and both arms had pigeon egg rubies set into the metal, identical to the ones on the chalice. At the base of a marvelously graven old bird supported the cross with spread wings, its talons gripping a half orb of gold. The old scholar's hands trembled as he held the object. He gazed at the embossed figure of Christ upon it, surmounted the words by the letters INRI, Crucifix Antiquus, wrought by the same Benizzian hand that fashioned the chalice. Do you realize we're the first ones to hold since the 17th century? Ben and John were inspecting the tallow-bound sheep minutely when Will's ma wrinkled her nose in disdain. What are you messing with that old sheep-hide for? The strange boy replied without looking up. For the next clue, but it doesn't seem to be here. Can you find anything, John? The carpenter's strong tattooed hands delved through the tallow skin. Nothing, lad. The chest was empty once we took the cross out. I was hoping we'd find something in this wrapping, but no. Alex sat at the table, his chin cupped in both hands, downcast. We missed the next clue somehow. The black lab's tail swished to and fro as he raised his eyes to Ben. Tell them it's carved on the bottom of that half dome the bird is standing on. I can see it from here. So could you if you were lying on the floor. Good job, old Blaithwaite held the cross up. What would you do without me, eh, mate? Ben sat down on the floor by the Labrador and patted him fondly. You're the best dog in the world, Ned. Excuse me while I break the good news to them. Ben squinted at the underside of the crucifix, then raised his voice in excitement. Look, there's carving underneath that dome the bird is standing on. I can see it. Mr. Blaithwaite harumphs. Bird, young man? That's an eagle of St. John the Evangelist. You're talking about, let's see. He turned the cross upside down with Mr. Mackey leaning over his shoulder, checking. He read aloud. 'Twould seem at the wicked's fate, the bell near sound made a sound, yet the death knell tolled aloud for those who danced around. The cairn crow doth perched above, light bearers neath the ground. Mrs. Wynne looked around. What do you make of that? The lawyer meticulously copied the words onto a piece of paper before taking charge of the cross. I'd better get this locked away in my office safe with all dispatch. Could you return me down there in your gig, please? You have to have some lunch first, sir, Elaine chimed in. Then my Will can drop you off. Over hot meat and potato pie, Mr. Blaithwaite made out another copy of the words for his own use. Very good, very good. Must get back to the library, of course. I'll study this and let you know my findings. Yes, very good. Amy made more copies in her fine, neat hand and distributed them to everyone, keeping one for herself and her brother. After lunch, it was decided they would spend the rest of the day trying to solve the riddle. They had the time. Will delivered Mrs. Wynne to her house first. Ben stayed in the gig, alighting to the village square with others. Mr. Mackey read the notice tacked to the board on the post not far from his office. He nodded to them, his face grave. 2 days from today, the clearances start. That means Smithers and his partners will be here with the country officials and bailiffs. Payments will be made to the evacuating tenants, and the land will be cleared. And unfortunately, Chapel Vale will cease to exist as a village community and become a limestone quarry and cement factory. Those are the facts, my friends. Ben's blue eyes grew hard. Not if we can help it. Chapter 33. You got Ned and Horatio. Smithers tapped lightly on Maud Bowie's bedroom door and called out as gently as his gruff, demanding voice would allow. Are you in there, Miss Bowie? I'd like a word with you in the sitting room if possible. Maud opened the door a crack and was confronted by Smithers' rather worried-looking face. I think you would owe me an apology first for the way you insulted me this morning, Mr. Smithers. It galled him to do it, but there was no other way. Well, I was a bit hasty, shall we say. Forgive me. I'm a gruff fellow, sometimes coming of doing business among men all the time. I shouldn't have to raise my voice to you, young lady. I mean, Mrs. Bowie. Miss Bowie. She stared at him, enjoying her moment of triumph, and then shut the door in his face. I'll be down presently. Obadiah Smithers drew in a deep breath, clenched his fist, and strode purposely along the corridor to his son's room. Flinging the door wide, he marched in with no word and dragged the coverlet off Wilf, who lay huddled still in a breakfast mess. Smithers curled his lips in disgust as his son sniffed and sobbed. It wasn't me. He went in there on his own. I had nothing to do with it, honest. I never. His father towered over him, ignoring his pleas. Enough, sir. No more lies. I saw Regina's father in the village this morning. He caught her sneaking in long after midnight, so you can stop your sniveling lies. I know exactly where you went around the Almshouse last night. Wilf cowered on the bed, his face ashen. Regina's the liar. It was her who got Alex murdered, not me, I swear. His father's voice was like thunder. What nonsense is this of murder, eh? I saw the very boy you're talking of, the animal's vet's young son. He's alive and well, sitting on a dairy cart with his friends. So you can stop your lying about murder. Wilf was temporarily lost for words. He sat open-mouthed as reality flooded in on him. Alex was alive. There would be no policemen calling on him, no judges, court, or prison. His father ranted on furiously. A disappointment to you, that's what you have been, lad. A thorough disappointment. Letting yourself get beaten up by a boy half your size, then thinking up stupid murder plots. Still, I blame myself in ways. You're not half the young fellow I was at your age. No backbone, mollycoddled, that's what you've been, spoiled, rotten. But all that stops right here and now, sir, do you hear me? No more being waited on by a maid or hiding behind your mother's skirts. Oh, no, my lad, it's boarding school for you. They'll straighten you out, and no mistake. Wilf had only heard one of the latter part in his father's tirade. He leapt out of bed, a horror look out on his face. Boarding school? His father took him by the arm and shoved him in the direction of the bathroom. Aye, boarding school. There's a good one up in Scotland, so I'm told. I'll make the arrangements today. Now get in there and clean the mess off yourself. Then you can tidy your room and pack your trunk. I'm not having the good name of Smithers scoffed by a village bumpkins. No use appealing to your mother. My decision's final, sir. Final. Slamming the bathroom door on his son's stunned face, Smithers went downstairs and out onto the back lawn, where he took a deep breath of the summer air and straightened his starched collar. Maud Bowie was still sitting primly, reading another of the young ladies' etiquette books, not on hair out of the place, and not a sign of flush on her cheeks. She shut the book decisively, folding her hands on the cover. You wanted a word with me, sir? Well? Clasping both hands behind his back, Smithers encircled her chair several times, finishing facing her. Those are associates you're bringing from London, Miss Bowie. Completely composed, she stared at him levelly. Yes. He dropped an eye and lowered his voice. Let them come and do what they've got to do, but no mistakes or failures. I want them in and out of Chapel Vale as quick as possible, understood? Maud could not help reveling in her victory. Jackman, Doing, and Bowie are an established London company. We don't deal in failures and mistakes, like some I could mention. Blood mounted in Smithers' cheeks as he struggled to control himself. Still turning on his heel, he made for the house, replying as he went, "I leave it up to you, my dear." A black cat appeared in the hedgerow, purring, and it rubbed its flank against Maud's fine-grained calf-button boots. She shooed it off with a swipe of her book. "Shoo, cat!" Horatio prowled slowly back through the small gap in the hedge. "Meow. Ratio go home now. Winnie got milk. Sardines. Purr." The black Labrador rose slowly from his hiding place in the shade of some lilacs. "Come on, then, me old fur bag. I've heard enough for today. Sardines, nasty, slimy little fishies. Don't know how you can eat the things." Mrs. Wynne was taking her afternoon nap in the sitting room. Ben sat outside on the sunny lawn. He unfolded a copy of the poem Amy had given to him and began studying it. "'Twould seem at the wicked's fate, that bell near sound made a sound, yet the death knell tolled aloud for those who danced around. The cairn crow doth perched above, light bearers neath the ground." Sweat suddenly beaded on his forehead as he felt cold despite the summer day. The bell made a sound. Cairn crow. Visions and images of death floated in his mind. Villainous faces marked by evil appeared unbidden. The sound of sea waves roaring in his ears. Long, long ago, Vanderdecker, Petroso, Scraggis, Jamal, he saw them all leering, cursing. But the others were there, mingled with the crew of the Flying Dutchman, older, half-shadowed, their features showing the wickedness of evil men the world over. Closing his eyes tight, Ben fell back upon the grass, shuddering, feeling the earth like a rolling ship. Warm breath and a damp tongue against his cheek brought Ben back from his dreadful trance. "Now then, pal, are you all right?" Something smooth and silky brushed his hand, and Ben sat up, glad to be back in the normal world. Ned was sitting next to him. Caught sight of Horatio, vanished into the house. Immediately, Ben felt better. He hugged the big dog's neck. "I'm all right now you're here, you old rogue. It just happened I was reading the poem from the base of the cross when this awful feeling came over me." The Labrador nodded. "The Flying Dutchman again, eh?" Ben ran his fingers through his tousled blonde hair. "Yes, it was Vanderdecker and the others, but there were strange faces there too, frightened ones I'd never seen before. Good job you came and snapped me out of it. I think it was due to reading the poem." A bee was taking interest in Ned's nose, and he swatted it with his paw. "Then don't read the poem. Leave it to the others to solve. They're a pretty brainy lot, especially the old Mackey and Blaithwaite. Real knowledge pots, those two. Besides, we'll have the others to worry about tomorrow. Bet you'd forgotten about those rough types due to come up from London." Ben smote his forehead with an open palm. "Of course. The 4 men Miss What's-her-name said were to arrive Thursday. I've been so busy contending with riddles and dealing with Wilf's gang, they completely slipped my mind. Have you found out any more about this situation, Ned?" The black Labrador winked. "Oh, yes, indeed. I spent a very profitable hour at the back of Smithers' yards. You should have heard the racket. Mr. Smithers must have the lungs of leather. By the way, is it time for tea? Come on. I'll tell you later. We've got the rest of the day. At least we won't have to worry about young Wilf anymore." Ben followed Ned inside. "What do you mean about Wilf?" Ned helped himself to a drink of water from his dish. "Tell you later. Come on, get the kettle, slice the seed cake. Where's my old lady?" Ben spread a clean cloth over the table. asleep in the sitting room. We'll surprise her with a nice afternoon tea when she wakes. Ned, will you go tell Horatio to keep from under my feet? Ned shook his head. No use telling him anything. It's about sardines, unless it's about sardines. And that's where we'll stop for today. Let's me sing to you. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land, and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines. Our flags unfurled to every breeze, from dawn to setting sun. We have fought in every clime and place where you could take a gun. In the snow of far-off northern lands, and in sunny tropic scenes, you will find us always on the job, the United States Marines. Here's health to you and to our corps, which we are proud to serve. In many a strife we fought for life, and never lost our nerve. If the Army and the Navy ever looked on heaven's scenes, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines. Semper Fi, hoorah. It's a nice day out today. Lots of families out doing things. They had the LCS on earlier today. It was fun to watch. All right. Let me pray for you. And I'll get out of your hair. Dear Jesus, thank you for having your hand of protection on everyone. Bless them. A good night's sleep. Place to eat. And transportation if they need it. Amen. Thank you all the viewers, chatters, listeners, and feelers. Appreciate you all. Wish you well. All that you're doing. Emmanuel, God with us.